Right, I think we've got people coming into the webinar at the moment. So just a welcome from myself, Jane Malcolm, and welcome to this rights-based discussion that we're having this afternoon. We have with us today Angela Phillips, and I'll give you an introduction to her later, and also to Liliane Umutesi. So welcome to this webinar and for your time this afternoon for coming along. So just give it a few more minutes, let some more people join in. Right, I'll just get started and let people join in as we're introducing everyone. So hello everybody and welcome to our panel discussion on children's human rights and the early years. My name is Jane Malcolm and I'll be the facilitator for today's event. I've worked in early learning and childcare for 30 years and I'm now working with the National Day Nurseries Association. I've always championed the rights of the child, in particular our very youngest children who don't always get heard, and I'm very passionate about that. I'm currently working on a PhD on love in childcare, which again is it's a right of the child to have that love from those that are looking after them. So the event today is being hosted by the Children's Parliament and Catanac as part of the Year of Childhood. So today's event will be a 1 hour long session and will include reflections on the subject from our two panelists, followed by the Q&A session. We were due to have Carly with us today as well, but unfortunately she's been unable to join us, so we'll have two speakers today. Your cameras and microphones will be off for the duration of the webinar. Please share any questions that you may have for our panelists in the Q&A box as we go along, and we'll pick those up for you. Although we will be able to take just a few questions because of the time today, we will use these questions and comments to support continued dialogue on the subject. If you have any technical issues, can we ask in the first instance that you try leaving the webinar and then coming back to us? And if that doesn't work, if you can let us know, just put a note in the chat function. Also, the webinar is being recorded and will be hosted on the Children's Parliament website and the YouTube channel. If you'd like to tweet or put anything on Facebook or any other social media, please use the hashtag Year of Childhood 2021. And we've got people live tweeting as we speak. So why is this event happening today? You may all know that on the 16th of March, MSPs in the Scottish Parliament voted unanimously to make children's rights, as outlined in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, law in Scotland. This reflects the increasing support for children's human rights across Scotland's public bodies and services. But what does this mean for families and children in the early years? This will be the last of 3 discussions that we host, and the aim of these events is to bring together stakeholders in early years to discuss how children's human rights can be promoted, developed and embedded in practice. The focus of this discussion will be how families understand the UNCRC implementation and how children's rights can affect their parenting. Today's webinar will be coming from various perspectives, including an international contribution highlighting the universal nature of parenting and children's rights. So today we have 2 brilliant speakers joining us for the panel, and we'll hear from them shortly. Just a quick introduction. We have Angela Phillips. I don't know if Angela wants to give us a wee wave. So we have Angela Phillips, who is the coordinator of the Early Years Scotland Family Visitor Centre, where she supports families and children and works closely with the Scottish Prison Service to ensure children's rights are being included in the decision making. She began her career as a registered childminder, delivering community childminding in partnership with Glasgow City Council, as well as ELC funded placements, before moving to Early Years Scotland to work on their dedicated children affected by parental imprisonment funded project. She has worked in early years for 10 years with a strong focus on supporting children affected by parental imprisonment. During her work with Early Years Scotland, Angela has delivered child development programmes to fathers and mothers in custody, including a session on the importance of the UNCRC and highlighting how parents can become involved in promoting rights for their own children. Throughout her studies, she has maintained a strong children's rights focus, and for her M.Ed in Childhood Practice dissertation, she is researching views and attitudes around the use of mother and baby units and the possibility of overnight stays for children in the new community custody units in Scottish prisons. It's a very interesting project. Our second speaker today is Liliane Umutesi, and Liliane will be joining us from Rwanda, where she lives with her family. She has 4 children aged between 2 and 11 years, and Liliane works as an administrative assistant in Green Hills Academy, a school that serves children from 2 to 18 years old. Although she has a background in business administration, Liliane has recently been recognised by the Academy for her commitment to early childhood education and is currently working towards a change in career. Liliane's interest in children's human rights is evident in her home and work life. So, without further ado, I would like to hand over to Angela, who's going to tell us all about her work. Thank you, Angela.
Hi, can everyone see that screen? Yeah, am I good before I go, before I just start speaking? So yeah, as Jane said, my name's Angela Phillips and I'm the coordinator of the Early Years Scotland Family Visitor Centre at HMP Low Moss. So just hold on, it's not letting me. Right, that's me, sorry. Technology at its best. So Early Years Scotland, what we do. So Early Years Scotland is committed to providing the very best start for every child in Scotland with a leading national organisation for children pre-birth to 5. So within our work, we've got 4 strands. So working directly with children and their families. So a lot of that work is based in community settings and primary schools. Membership and support for ELC settings, groups, professionals and students. We support a lot of play groups, mother and toddler groups, nurseries, basically anybody in the ELC industry. Delivery of high quality relevant professional learning. We've got our own professional learning academy where we deliver dedicated training sessions to the early years workforce. And number 4, delivery of advocacy and advisory services relating to legislation, policy and practice. We do a lot of work with the Scottish Government and have a big input into Scottish Government policy on early years. So for anybody that doesn't know, family visitor centres, all family visitor centres in Scotland are run by independent charities. We're not profit. And we work in partnership with the Scottish Prison Service. We don't work for the Scottish Prison Service. They provide us the space at Low Moss. We're after the secure line. So visitors and families have to come through and check in at the main gate and then come through to us. So the photograph here is an example of our play area in the visitor centre. So the purpose of the visitor centre is achieve positive outcomes for prisoners' families and friends, and we are the voice of the visitors. So the visitors come to us, they tell us any concerns, we help them with loads of different things, and we also report that back through family strategy to high up Scottish Prison Service to make sure that the needs and requirements of the visitors are heard and ultimately their voices. So the 3 core functions of a family visitor centre: improve the visit experience, allow families to access independent and impartial advice, and ultimately to be the voice of the needs of the families. So there's 2 questions I'm going to focus on today. So firstly, how can we involve parents in understanding and promoting children's rights? It's estimated that between 20,000 and 27,000 children in Scotland are affected by parental imprisonment. Now, that's only the figure that we know about. We anticipate the figure is way higher, but unfortunately there's no way to actually track this. But the startling thing about that figure is it's approximately double the amount of children that are affected by divorce. And I know myself personally, when I was at school, you always knew somebody whose parent was divorced, myself included, but I didn't know anybody knowingly whose parent was in prison, but the chances are that was absolutely within my year group at school. So Early Years Scotland, we've got two parts of our prison work. One part is a 10-week child development programme. So this is delivered by qualified practitioners over 6 prisons in Scotland. And within this, we work with the parents in custody, and also alongside that goes a 10-week visit where families bring up the children and mums and dads get the opportunity to bring in what they've learned into a kind of bonding environment. We cover lots of sessions over attachment, bonding, children's rights, supporting positive behaviour, all sorts of things. But one of the sessions we do is we actually use the UNCRC child-friendly version, and we give that out to mums and dads, and we ask them to have a look at it and bring back to us for a group discussion what they want, what they would like to decide, what they'd like to talk more about. And this, I've highlighted here the main 3 articles that come back. So Article 6, life, survival and development. Article 14, freedom of thought and religion. This comes up a lot in that, do children pick religion or do parents pick religion? And at what point is a child asked, if at all? So that really causes a big bit of debate. Also Article 16, protection of privacy. Now that goes from privacy from children having their nappy changed, getting changed, right through to social media. Should we be looking on children's phones? Do we need to keep them safe? What you know, where do their rights end and our rights as a parent step in? That's quite a good debate as well. The other one that comes up quite a lot is gender. Gender neutral toys, what games children should play. So a big part of Early Years Scotland is to, you know, put these things out and with a qualified practitioner discuss the different things about children's rights to make sure that they're being embedded throughout the home as well. And the other part of the thing is from Early Years Scotland point of view is the Family Visitor Centre. So the other one I've picked is why it's important that children experience their rights at every setting they attend. So the UNCRC poster, it's up in schools, it's up in nurseries, community centres, a lot of places they go. Now, again, 7% of children live through imprisonment of a parent during their school years. Now, that's, again, only the figure that we know about. So Family Visitor Centres work in partnership with families outside. We're also funded by Scottish Government and embed the following articles. This is a focus on our work with children. So 2, 3, 9, 12 and 20. Biggest ones being 9 and 20. So keeping families together. Big purpose of the visitor centre is having a relaxing area for families to come in. They can chat through with visitor centre staff, any concerns they have. We can reassure them, take them through to the visit room, settle them in the visit room. And, you know, we provide activities for children to make sure that that 45-minute visit is the best it can be. They make the maximum use of the time. Also, children without families, that can be quite difficult. We also facilitate a lot of social work visits where, you know, families are separated and children are visiting with social work. So again, families outside do lots of work on this with children of all ages. For us at Early Years Scotland in the Visitor Centre, we work with children of all ages for the Child Development Programme, children up to the age of 5 or primary 1 at a kind of maximum. So I just want to finish just with a little thank you. And this is a little quote that we got from, we did some work at Early Years Scotland in the Stay, Play and Learn sessions in primary schools. and the focus was around about what children know about their rights. And one of the big things was identity. We were talking about the importance of children knowing their own name, and it came at this discussion about addresses and where they live. And I just thought this was really lovely. A little boy said, and he was so proud that he knows his address and his front door's blue. So thank you everyone for listening. And if there's any questions, put them in the chat and I can answer them at the end. Thank you. I'm going to hand back to Jane now.
Come on back to me. Right. Thank you very much, Angela. That was very interesting. I would like to hand over to Liliane now, who is going to talk about her work in Rwanda. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, as I said, I'm Liliane Umutesi from Rwanda. I'm a parent. I work in a school as an admin officer, but I'm going to share my experience as a parent because I'm not so much in education. I'm more in administration. Yeah. So I have 4 children, as she said, and there are 2 who have 10 years and above, and the little ones are below 5. So when I heard about children's rights, I heard about it when my 2 big kids were already in school. So the 2 little ones, I had them after hearing about children's rights. So the experience I had, I want to talk about children's rights, how it affected my parenting style. So first in Africa, when you talk about children's rights, parents tend to think it's letting the kids do whatever they want. And parents tend to be reluctant. They think the kids will be rebellious, not listen to them, become bad kids. So I was among those parents who were very reluctant, and because of the culture. So when I joined Green Hills Academy, they started introducing us to children's rights. So I started applying those rights in my parenting, and I saw the difference. So the difference I saw the difference in my kids who are older compared to the little ones. So one thing I learned is to hear their views or their voices. And I can give you an example. My big kids, when I ask them to do something, they tend to wait for me to tell them what to do. Like they ask permission. If they want to go out, they tend to ask permission. If they want to go to do something good, as an adult, you would think they can do something good without asking permission. But it has affected them from the early years because I was more controlling. So I wasn't following the children's rights. So I was like, if you want to go outside, you ask for permission. If you want to play with this toy, you ask for permission. As they grew, when they become bigger, they kept that in them, and it has affected them in their choices, in their views. They don't say easily what they think. They wait for you to give them permission to say what they think on any discussion we have. So opposed to the little ones, they are very spontaneous. They can say what they think, what they don't like, say something. They can say they don't want it. So they're spontaneous, and I can know them better. I can know their personalities. So they're easy to know and to live with. And I liked it. I liked it. So that's when I embraced the children's rights. So one more thing I can say, for parents who are still thinking it's something wrong or something bad, it will affect the kids. It will affect them, but in a good way, in a very good way, because you can communicate easily with a child who knows his or her rights. They don't hide things, they speak it out. Yeah, I think that's it. If you have questions. I can't hear you.
That's me now. I think I'm just, a sign has come up on the screen. It's confused me a little bit. Yeah, so thank you very much both to Angela and to Liliane. Both very interesting experiences. I've actually visited Low Moss, where Angela where there's one of the family centres, and it's a fascinating place, absolutely fascinating place to go. I was really interested in the fact that Angela gave us about divorce, about the fact that, you know, I was probably the same at school. I knew people that were divorced, but I didn't know if there was anybody had parents in custody. So, you know, potentially that is a big thing for all of us to think about. And I think it was interesting as well, Angela, the bit about how the parents that were in custody, they knew about the rights of their child, but they didn't necessarily know that there were rights, and it was that kind of having those discussions and highlighting them.
I nearly cried.
And I think the fact that the main outcome is that to make the visit as the best it can be. As I say, you said the point that it was beyond the kind of secure line. Even going to visit as an adult, that was quite a traumatic thing to do, to have to go through that. So really working with the children and you know, helping everybody understand that they have rights as well. So really, you know, really fascinating place and work that you do. And I was really interested in Liliane as well, talking about her two different experiences, where she had her older children and then her younger children, and the younger children are just that much more confident, and they're sort of more willing to speak up. And I loved at the end where you said that that you really got to know them as individual people. You really got to know their personalities, and that was something that was coming out. And I think that's really important about children's rights, is, you know, letting the children know that they are individual people. And I think that's a fabulous thing to see as a parent, you know, to experience that. And I think as well, you said about, you know, if parents are a little bit scared that it's something, you know, something bad will happen if we will let children realise and understand their rights. But actually what you said was it affects them in a really good way. So I think that's quite a powerful, positive message at the end there. It was just fascinating to hear your experiences and the different things that your children did. So I think we've got some questions. I'm just having a little look here. We've got one here that says, Liliane, do you speak with other parents about your approach to your rights-based parenting? What is their response? Would you like to answer?
Yes, yeah, we talk about it. Many parents now in my community are understanding it, and they are getting into it's like they are training themselves, first of all, to be listeners, and then they will see the difference as well. Yeah,
you said at the beginning as well that parents were reluctant because they thought that children would be rebellious in some way. Do you think that's changing? Do you think people are having a better understanding?
Yeah, people have a better understanding when we present to them like this experience. We we talk about it. Talking about it is the first point, because before I heard about it, I didn't know. So when we talk about it many times,
Yeah.
people come to know.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Thanks. I've got another question here that's extremely useful to hear of the key rights identified as important to parents. I guess this is for Angela. Were there any highlighted by parents as being more challenging to relate to, understand, or to put into practice, but of equal importance to families?
Well, yeah, the reason that, well, the way that I've been doing it with when I speak to parents is I let them read it and then come back to me, because there's loads of things that we could highlight within there and say like, well, what about this or what about that? So I like them to kind of go through it, but there is like a kind of gut reaction to, like, especially like, you know, children have the right not to be kidnapped. Children have the right not to be abused. You know, a lot of parents will be like, well, that's obvious, but it's maybe obvious within the group that we're sitting with, like things like right to education, right to go to the dentist. We do a session on sugar and see the amount of people that we speak to, and they go, well, when did you first take your kid to the dentist? Oh, well, don't know, haven't been to the dentist yet. So even though these things are there, yes, it's a parent, and it's, you know, where does you know, is it a parent's right or a parent's responsibility? And that's what the difficulty is. So, you know, and a lot of the time the dads, especially the dads, I'll show them this bit of paper and they'll go like that, children have got too many rights, I'm not interested. And there's a challenge in itself, because you're saying, well, you know, and that's where, you know, you're saying, well, it's going to be embedded in Scottish law, and it's to protect children. We're there to protect children, and it goes back, you know, it's embedded in GIRFEC, and for me, GIRFEC is about professionals. It's empowering professionals, whereas UNCRC can empower parents. It can allow parents to look, and yes, the things that I highlighted, I did because that's the things that mainly come up, especially around religion, gender, privacy. So a huge big thing about online security and what their children are looking at. And parents think, well, not think, you know, parents are like, well, it's my job to keep them safe. Yes, it is. However, it's to be done in a way that they need to involve the children, like what Liliane was saying. So I think it is very challenging for parents, very challenging for parents of, I don't think I'm that old, but from an age where, I was actually talking about this in a previous conversation, that when I was at school up until primary 5, we had a separate boys and girls playground. The boys and girls didn't play together. That's unheard of now. That people think I'm making that up when I say that. You had boys and girls doors. Yeah, but that just wouldn't happen now in all these modern schools where we've got outdoor classrooms off a classroom. So for parents, it is very difficult, because it's what Liliane was saying as well. You know, depending on your parenting style, whether you ask or whether you don't. My children never ask me anything, and I'm, after listening to you, I'm thinking, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. They'll go off and, you know, do their own thing to a degree, but I think it is very challenging for parents, because it's not just a tick box. It's about embedding it into your whole ethos and ethics to make it work for everyone. Yeah, I suppose parents have to also buy into it as well in their own understanding of it, because it's fine getting handed a bit of paper, but if you don't really believe in what it is that you're doing, you know, it's that kind of passing that on to children kind of thing. Yeah, it's very interesting. Let's see, we've got some other questions. We've got lots of questions coming through. How do we ensure the conversation around parenting and parenting from a rights-based approach remains positive and doesn't make anyone feel shamed in any way? Guess Liliane, do you think you could?
Could you please repeat the question?
Yes, certainly. There's a lot of words there. I'll try and cut it down a bit. How do we ensure the conversation around parenting and parenting from a rights-based approach remains positive and doesn't make anyone feel shamed in any way.
Okay.
I guess you said at the end of your bit around when people think it'll be something bad, but actually sort of saying it is positive. It is a positive thing. You know, Angela, do you have any comments?
I think just, I suppose I kind of touched on that a little bit. I hadn't read that question, but it's to me, it's about empowering parents to try and make it positive, but you're not saying, you know, you have to do this. You're saying, you know, look at considering this and think about, you know, the implications of it. You know, big thing about it has been the smacking law. Huge. That comes up all the time, not so much now because it's done and dusted, but see, at the time when that went into legislation, that was a huge thing, because then as a parent, but also as a practitioner, what do you do if that happens in your session?
Yeah.
You're now law abided to do that. So it's a hard one, because it's not about shaming them, but sometimes it's taken out with your hands.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's a question for both of you potentially. What would be your advice to other parents who are new to learning about children's rights?
An advice?
What advice would you give other parents?
I would say the impact is good. And you can see the impact from the first year when you learn about it and you try to use that approach. So the advice would be try it and see.
Try it and see, yeah. There's a follow-up question, Liliane, that says, how have you found talking to your two sets of children about their rights? Have the older two found it as empowering as the younger two?
The older one found about it from school. So they knew about it from school, and they came knowing, but they couldn't see it at home. Opposed to the little ones, I had started talking about their rights at home, and then when they went to school, it was a continuity. Right.
So they did see a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Angela, when parents read about their child's rights, does it bring up things from their own childhood that are powerful?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say two of the things that come up mainly is, one is that a lot of parents say that when they were growing up, children should be seen and not heard. So you didn't answer back. You did what you were told. And, you know, I've actually been fortunate enough earlier Scotland within my programme to work with a lot of grandparents. And that's been really eye-opening, because they've maybe been in custody for quite a while, and their own children have had children. I worked with one granddad in particular, and he'd been in for a long term, and he'd just got this new granddaughter, and he came on the programme and he was like blown away. He was like, the difference between how he was growing up, and yeah, so there's kind of massively generational thing about how parenting's looked at now as opposed to how it was then. And that can be a big change to, like, you know, for parents to be like, what, you want me to ask my child? Yeah, we want you to have a conversation around it. The other one that comes up a lot is I've worked with a lot of dads, especially, who've been excluded from school. So there's a big thing about that, and how spectrum, children on the spectrum are dealt with now. I've worked with a lot of dads with undiagnosed ADHD, autism, and diagnosed later in life, and they're saying that they've got massive worries that, you know, they always say, what if I've passed this on to my child? And what if my child's treated the same as me? And that's very difficult for us, because we would be saying, well, things have changed now. There's now, you know, there's other things in place, there's policies in place to make sure, you know, that children, you know, it is, you know, again, going back to GURFIC, looking at the child's individual learning journey, looking at what the child needs, not what the school needs or what the classroom needs. But it is a challenge, because, you know, that's what they've experienced in their childhood. You know, they maybe didn't behave because they had undiagnosed spectrum things going on, excluded from school, and then, you know, and it is difficult, because you are trying to say things are different, but sometimes, you know, you can't say that for sure. It's just you have to go with the process and trust that the processes are in place.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So how do you think early years staff can help and support parents in understanding and promoting children's rights?
Well, I think it's very difficult. So back to my childminding years as well, you do get a lot of parents that come to you and go, you'll know the answer to this. And you go, well, I can find out. So it's again about, like, what, you know, advice, like, you know, if speak to your early years staff, because they don't know everything. We try. We do try. But, you know, I mean, and legislation is constantly changing. There's constantly new things. But with the introduction of the internet, everything's available. You know, people can go on, find things out, you know, join things like this. Children's Parliament are a great advocate for children's rights, and having examples on there of what you can do. Yeah.
Liliane, can I ask you the same question? Just in terms of your work in Rwanda, how do you support parents understand and promote children's rights?
We have workshops where we invite parents in and talk about it, but we also sometimes invite parents to come in classes and see how we do about it. Because past years, like few months ago, you know, we had lockdowns and parents had kids at home. So when we came back, some parents said, how do you manage them? How do you do to manage, depending on the number of kids you have in a class? So we invite them and let them come and see how we manage them, how we work with kids. And when they see and they try to practice at home. That's a second way of doing it.
That's a good way of letting people actually come into the classroom and sort of actually be part of it. Absolutely. So again, Liliane, were there any challenges for you or other parents with helping children to experience their rights at home and nursery in the same way? So I guess that's about the two different settings.
Just repeat the question, I get the first part.
Were there any challenges for you or other parents
to
help children experience rights at home and nursery in the same way?
The first challenge parents faced was about something a bit tricky. It's about punishment, punishing or disciplining their kids. That was a challenge at first because of the culture. I think I'm sure it's because of the culture. So I can give you an example. One of my children asked me one day, and he said, "Why do you do this?" Because I was disciplining him, and he said he's the older. Why do you do this? And then I looked at him and I said, "Because my mom did it to me." And then he looked at me and said, "But why do you have to do what your mom did to you?" That's when I realized, why am I repeating the same thing? Because that's what I was taught. So the first challenge was about disciplining how to discipline a child without hurting, without pushing, or without going beyond his rights.
Interesting. So I think that's us just about at the end of our questions. Yep. Last question here is just basically, do either of you have any tools that would be of benefit to early years staff that you could use for people to work with, or parents for working with their children? I know that at NDNA we have a publication called Listen to Me, Children's Views on Children's Rights, and it's basically for early years staff to work with, you know, through their observations, how do you be the voice of the child? You know, how do you be the voice of particularly children that are very, very young and are maybe not speaking yet, whatnot. So just if anybody's got any interesting tools that they could use, you could pop into the chat. I've got one question here. Angela, is it okay to have the slides that you produced at the end?
Yeah.
Yep, that would be great.
So, yeah.
And I have the note here saying the Children's Parliament has a wee book of promises online, so that's a useful thing for parents if you want to go and have a look at that.
One of the things that we've used, and I picked it up from, I don't know, it was a training session I was at, and it's a book called We're All Born Free. I think that's what it's called. I can go and get it and check it. And it's basically a picture version of rights that you can show to children. And we've used that. We used that with primary 1 pupils. That was how the little quote that I'd got at the end of my slides, that was how we got that. We got the pictures and we blew the pictures up, and we did it through a picture version. We said, you know, what does the picture mean to you? What do you think about this? And got them to talk around about that. And that was quite a good, and I know my son actually used that same book at school. So I know the schools are using that as well.
That's good. Yep. I've got a question there. What was the book called from the Children's Parliament? There you go, they've popped that up. Wee Book of Promises can be found, and there's the link in the chat. So I think that's us, brought our questions to a close. So it's just to say thank you for that really interesting discussion. I have a note here as well to say that I'd like to take the opportunity to encourage you all to sign up as an unfairty. If you've not done that already, I have been an unfairty for a few years now. The unfairties are people who are courageous, and there you go, courageous in discussing children's issues and children's rights, and are making a difference in children's lives, and who are willing to speak up for and stand alongside children. So before we finish today, I would like to invite you to share with us one thing that you will take away from today's event. So if you just pop it in the chat, if there's something that's caught your attention and made you think that's really interesting, if you could just pop that in the chat now, that would be great. I'll give you a wee second. Oh, and there you go, there's your link to the unfairties as well. Give you a wee second to do that. Okay. There you go. Percentage of families impacted by a parent being in prison. Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Importance of educating parents. Great. That's really good. So there you go. Educating, the typing's too fast. How to put rights into practice as parents can lead to better understanding in relationships. Great. And there's the book. Angela's popped the book in. We Are All Born Free. That's great. I'm sure the team behind all of this will be taking notes of all these interesting things that you've learned. There you go. It was moving to hear about the positive changes in parenting styles from Liliane. Definitely about the number of families affected by parental imprisonment. So yeah, as we're getting them coming through, I'd just like to say before we finish today that you will be getting an email from the Children's Parliament, and it will give you a link to the web page about the unfairties if you've not managed to catch it here, and how you can sign up. And you'll also get a link for an evaluation, and we would really appreciate if you could take a few moments to complete this. And just to say thank you so much for attending today's event. We hope this will be the first of many conversations and actions to develop understanding and awareness of children's human rights in the early years. So it just leaves me to say thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.